welcome to Old Man Energy. I'm your host, Flint Anderson. As always, thank you for joining us. I hope you find the content valuable, find a reason to stay and a reason to come back. If you find something that you can share with your friends, that's what keeps us going. So make sure that you like and subscribe. You'll get notified of every new episode on Thursday, plus any bonus content that we put out there. I also post daily on social media on all different platforms, different content. So if you enjoy what you see here, then go check me out over there. Today, I have a very special show for you. I'm excited to be reposting this. I think it has some value, and I want to get it out there in front of my listeners. I was a guest a couple of months ago with a gentleman who's been a big influence on me here recently. I've learned a bunch from him, and over the course of just the acquaintance and learning from each other, we've become friends. So I want to make sure that this message gets played into my audience, but also that this gets reposted. It was originally posted live onto his channel and to mine. I am going to lead into that here. We're going to post it again, original and unedited. We both are sharing some stories. We're sharing some stories about business, about being a dad, and just about life in general. So stay tuned. At the end, I'm going to come back and I'm going to do a couple of follow-ups after the broadcast and give you guys a couple of special offers. So I hope you enjoy this. This is my appearance with Marshall Gillan on his podcast, Marshall Live. Enjoy and give me some feedback below. Let me know what you think.
Yo, what is going on, everybody? It's your boy, Marshall.
And I am live episode of the Marshall Gillan Show. If it is your first time watching or listening to the program, you guys, welcome in. If there's one thing that I live my entire life by, one message I have for the world, it is that your mess is your message. And today, at the age of 39, at the time of recording this podcast, my life looks drastically different than it ever did when I was growing up. And there's two reasons above all else that have given me the freedom to build the life that I want, to chase my dreams, to be able to live extraordinary in an ordinary world. And that is personal development and entrepreneurship. If you've never watched this show before, you guys know that I am on a quest to find leaders across the world who have turned their mess into their message, using personal development, entrepreneurship, and now are leading from the front. And today is no different. I am bringing on with you guys a new friend, a new leader, a new coach, a new consultant, a new speaker that I have just connected with recently. And the story that he's going to share with us today is absolutely incredible. It's one that's very, very relatable. In a world where we hear all the top gurus and entrepreneurs in the world on the same podcast, sharing the same stories, I know that it can become unrelatable to where you may be at right now in your journey. And that is why I created the Marshall Gillan Show, to go out there and connect with people just like today's guest. So without further ado, let's bring him on. Today's guest on the podcast is a coach, a consultant, a leader, a husband, a father, and founder of Old Man Energy, my new friend, Flint Anderson. What's up, brother?
Hey, Marshall. How are you today, brother? It's good to be here. Thank you.
Dude,
that was a hell of an intro.
Oh, I appreciate it, man. I was going through some of your Instagram today, and I want to get into what it is, what you do, and I have a question for you I want to shoot right off the bat. And I was going through your Instagram today, man, and I saw this image of you from not that long ago with these kind of short shorts on, and these just enormous quads just bulging out of your shorts, man. I was like, damn, this dude must squat, man. So welcome to the show, fellow squatter, fellow lifter. What does Old Man Energy mean to you?
Well, squatting.
Right?
No, old Man Energy came about actually in the gym. It started out a couple of years ago, and I was in a transition period in life. Kids were aging out. I was working really hard on getting into shape, but pretty much staying in shape at that point. And I was watching my peers and my friends become less mobile and worse out of shape. And I just felt really great that day. And I said to myself, I'm like, man, I got that old man energy today. I don't know where it's coming from. So that's where it came from. But some guys can relate to it as like you go to arm wrestle your dad and you never can seem to beat him, even though he doesn't work out. He just has that muscular density from years and years of working out. So however you take it, old man energy is just the energy we put into life as we get older. We don't have to give up and we don't have to slow down.
Dude, 100%, man. And when I stumbled across your brand, I was connected with it immediately. The term in and of itself resonates with me so much. And you just graciously had me on your show, the Old Man Energy podcast. And we actually discussed this. So not to retread it with you, Flint, necessarily, but just to kind of give an overview of what it was talking about on that show as well. I was sharing with Flint during the show that like as a lifter, as a young lifter in my 20s, I always used to look at the older guys in their 40s and 50s, and they were so just, and if you're a lifter who's listening or watching this, you know what I'm talking about, gentlemen. Like it's that dense, hard, dry look. And I always thought like, damn, I wish I could look like that. And I was sharing with Flint and he agreed. I was like, there was no way to rush the process. You get to this point where this old man energy is something that you get because you've survived battle after battle over time. And that's kind of where I want to start with right now with you, Flint, is I want to come out firing. We're going to get into what it is you do, how you help people, and all the things. But before we get into that, I want to ask the one big overarching question right off the bat, which is if you did have one message at this point in your life that you were going to share with the world, what would that message be? What encapsulates Flint Anderson and what he's on a mission to do in this world?
Man, what a great question. And there's so much I want to say. It's just, I'm huge on just information dump. It's like, I want to tell you all the things. But if there was one thing, is you don't have to settle for anything in your life. You can do anything that you want to do. You don't have to settle. You don't have to give up things as you get older. And you don't have to take what you're given. It doesn't matter where you're born. I read a quote this morning. It said there are people out there who were born into worse situations than you who are doing better than you. Quit giving yourself excuses. So that's it. Don't settle and don't accept where you want. Always chase after your dreams.
Well, dude, I love that. And it's so simplistic, but so spot on. And I think that's the one thing, Flint, at 39 that I'm starting to realize about becoming a leader and a man is that when I was younger, is all this bravado and, not pretentiousness, just all this, I'm going to do all of these things and I'm going to be number one in all the things. And as I've gotten older, what I've really started to settle into is like, there's only a few things I'm really, really good at. And that's okay. Because being really, really good at all of those few things and letting go of all the other things that don't actually fulfill me or make me happy or serve my purpose has made my life better and more peaceful. And so as it pertains to you saying, oh, this is the one message I have, this very simple message. You can become anything you want. Don't give up on yourself. That resonates with me, dude, because that's like what I tell people all the time. I'm like, it does not matter what you did, where you came from, where you started. You can do a 180-degree change in your life, no matter what. I do not care what it is you've done. You can find a pain and turn it into a purpose, a mess into a message. And so, Flint, let me ask you this, brother. Before you became the entrepreneur, before you became the coach and the consultant, long before you were an amazing father and husband, like where does Flint come from? Like what did he have to overcome just to become the man that he wanted? And the second part of that is where then does personal development and entrepreneurship start to impact your life? And then how does that shape it going forward?
Both good questions. The first question, I could talk for an hour about my backstory. It's pretty well out there, but I was born very poor. There's no other way to put it that way. We had no money. Mom was a nurse. There was 3 of us kids, and I grew up with nothing. Had some people in my life that showed me a different way, that there was a different way in life out there. And as I started my career, I didn't really know for sure what I wanted to do. I went to college for a little while, realized they weren't teaching me how to be rich. So I dropped out of college. Not quite 5 times as your story is, but left college. Thought I would be good in the corporate world, loved it for a little while. But again, the driving force behind me has always and ever been freedom. I wanted to be in control of my own destiny. And the old joke is I gave up working 50 hours a week for somebody else to work 100 hours a week for myself, but It was worth it. And that really led to me being a father and being a husband and being present for my family. As far as being an entrepreneur goes, I've always had what most people would think of as a side hustle. Even when I had a corporate job, I was always doing something on the side. And that's usually turned into something larger. Brought my wife home from work in the early 2000s, did the same for myself. And she, both of us, I've been full-time since 2004. There was a time when I was sick that she had to go back to work for a little while, but it didn't make sense for me to. That's an interesting story in and of itself. But man, freedom that's the number one thing. And if you're going to find anything that drives you in life, find that thing that you want as much as you want air when you're underwater.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. Well, let me ask you a little bit. I'm going to press you. I'm going to expand a little bit. So you're growing up, 3 kids. Mother's a nurse, dad not in the picture?
Mom and dad divorced when we were very young. Dad came back into the picture when I was 13, 14. I did live with him for a little while. more because mom couldn't afford to feed all of us. She couldn't afford to take care of us at that time. Learned a lot about my dad. My dad and I've had a rocky relationship over the years. We've reconciled to a certain degree at this point.
Yeah.
Carrying around that level of angst and anger for him not being there while I was growing up was just counterproductive. It wasn't hurting him and it wasn't doing me any good either.
Dude,
So
100%.
it was difficult for me. I was raised to be a very weak man. My mother's statement was, "You will not ever treat a woman as a doormat."
Mm.
And so turning my back on the way she was raising me to go with what was necessary and what was right was a very difficult decision, but was one of the best in my life. And being raised like that is something I still struggle with a little bit from day to day. So
And so how so now? I have so many questions that I want to expand on from that, but let's just stay in that vein for a second.
yeah.
How so? Like, how do you see that being raised and what you call weak? Like, how do you see that still affecting you as the man you are today? Like, where does that show up at?
There's certain habits and things that are ingrained to us when we're being raised, and we have to overcome them. If we go through childhood trauma, and my goodness, I'm not going to go into the amount of people that talk about childhood trauma on there, but we go through things in our childhood that are stressful or neglect or trauma or whatever it is. It shapes us during those years. So the challenge is my first reaction to a lot of things sometimes is not the aggressive reaction. It's the more passive reaction. And it needs to be the more aggressive reaction. I've learned over the years to compensate for that and to deal with that. But I don't blame my mother for that. You know what? She got hurt very badly and was determined to make sure that I never did that to anybody else. So I did learn a lot from that. And as a result, one of the gentlemen that I mentor, he summed it up perfectly. He describes me as a jacked Fred Rogers. So, because I lead with love, but I also believe in strength and understanding. And it's made for a unique blend of both in my personality today. So
I love that though, man. And I love it probably because I relate to it so much. But, I think that's part of being the divine masculine, right? Like when you step into your healed and divine masculine, is you find that they do lead from a place of love and compassion and empathy. However, the other side of the coin can be anger and rage and aggression or whatever it is. But like a well-balanced man, I'm finding is both sides of the coin. So I want to ask you this more specifically too, because you're bringing up something, Flint, for me as we have this conversation that, I've been starting to uncover the last 3 years. And I, for lack of a better way of putting it, have lived a lot of my adult life in my feminine energy, meaning my dad was gone. My stepdad was an asshole, was never around. And my mom just always, she ingrained in me that I want to make sure you never need a woman to take care of you and how to treat a woman. And so as you're saying this right now, I wasn't raised by a single mom, but I kind of was. And I've always come from that more compassionate side when really I know sometimes I need to choose aggression and I need to choose, can't build a house without a hammer. And I've only discovered that recently. So let me ask you, for men who may be listening to this right now and they're kind of tracking with what we're saying, where did that tide start to turn from you? Like, what was the awareness? Like, where did that come before you, where you really became aware of what you were struggling with? And then how have you started to build towards the man that is more complete as opposed to just the compassionate, passive man?
there's two phases. I bounced around a lot in my early 20s. I was married twice, divorced twice by the time I was 25. And both times it's really, I'd say both times, every time, just two of these examples, it's really been just where I got sick and tired of being where I was at. And that time in my life, in my early 20s, I was probably 23, 24. I was tired. I was like, what I'm doing is not working. I'm miserable. I'm not able to make choices. I don't have my freedom. But at the same time, at work, I was enjoying myself. I was in charge of the department. I was skyrocketing through the corporate ladder because I was really good at what I did. And I wasn't afraid to take risks. I had nothing to lose.
Right.
And it was a very interesting dichotomy. It was like, well, how can I start applying some of this to my personal life? And ultimately, that's what became my first book, which was the manual, What Every Guy's Dad Should Have Taught Him. And that published in 2012. All of the notes and everything, they came down to that. But it was, okay, what am I going to do to be different? How am I going to change and make myself more of the man I want to be? Over the course of that time, I met my wife, and we've been married 25 years now. And then somewhere in the middle of that relationship, I'd say somewhere within the first 10 years of that relationship, her strength and her aggression, and there's a clip on my Instagram where I talk about out of all the dominant women on the planet, I married their queen. Her strength and her aggression forced me to be a better man every day,
Yes.
or there would not have been that level of respect that I needed and wanted in the relationship. And between those two major events, it takes a lot of balls to say, you know what, I'm going to stand up, I'm going to do this on my own. And when I left the .com industry, they told me I was nuts, and the bubble burst about 3 weeks later. When I left my corporate job, they told me I was nuts, but it was the right thing, and I've never gone back since then. So those two things really help define myself as a man and as being masculine. Is okay, I'm going to do this whether or not I like it.
Yeah, I totally relate with that part too, because Kirsty's like, she must be like the co-queen or something, because she has absolutely forced me into it. She has been my rite of passage into manhood. God bless good women who kept us around. So let me ask you this: 3 boys. Well, where do you fall? Are you oldest, middle, youngest?
There was three of us. I'm the oldest, and then two sisters, two younger
Two
sisters.
sisters. Okay,
Yeah.
so 2 younger sisters. So you've always been the oldest.
Yes. Even after my father remarried, there's a brother and a sister there, but I've always been the oldest.
So have you always did you take on any added responsibility as a young man as your father was absent, or even kind of as he did come back in the picture? I mean, did you take on extra responsibilities, the older adult, or were you kind of left to your own oldest child, or were you kind of left to your own devices?
The answer to that question is yes to both.
Yeah.
Mom worked a lot. She worked nights. She picked up shifts where she could make the most money. As a result, we were on our own. At very, very young age, I started watching my sisters, started keeping an eye on them. My mother was never good with finances. So at a very young age, I tried to help with that. And that really, as a child, led to a lot of feelings of helplessness and desperation.
Right.
It's terrible to pay the price for somebody else's decisions that you don't control.
Yeah.
And that can lead to a lot of, and the word childhood trauma is so overused today.
Yeah,
I hate to even use that, but it can lead to a lot of stress and a lot of physiological and psychological changes in children. The result is I think I've been old since I was a kid.
Yeah.
I've always approached the world very, very with humor, but very, very seriously because of that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. That's why I kind of want to go back before we get into, the whole route that you took to get to where you're at. Most entrepreneurs I found in the 10 years I've been an entrepreneur, I noticed that a lot of them have done what they've done to kind of outwork their quote unquote childhood trauma, right? It seems to be that there are people that are proving something wrong or have something to prove, or, fuck everybody else. It's like most of the entrepreneurs I've met in my life are like that almost out of necessity, because there was something from their childhood, whether it's trauma, whatever you call it, but a limitation that they developed or a paradigm that they developed that was like, yo, I am restricted. I do not have the freedom, and they go out and prove themselves. And so I've noticed in my time, and especially in the speaking industry, bro, I mean, I don't even have to tell you, there's so many speakers that are preaching a message and they truly believe in what they're saying, but I can tell that it's not authentic. I'm like, that's bullshit. You haven't healed your shit. But that aside, the reason I want to ask that is because how much then do you think that being raised like that creates, develops you into the type of person that rises so fast in a corporate setting? Did you, and why do you think it took you so long to go another route to give yourself even more freedom? Because I see a lot of entrepreneurs or a lot of professionals, especially men, who are outworking themselves. They may be divorced or out of shape or whatever over here, but they're pouring everything that they have into this one thing to validate and prove themselves, but then everything else falls by the side. And so how much do you attribute the way that you grew up into you being able to have this meteoric rise in what you did? And then where does it start to balance out where you realize there's got to be more and I'm not doing this the healthiest way? Was it just what you explained earlier?
I hope I figured the second part of that question out at some point.
Yeah, my bad. My bad.
It has everything to do with it. Everything. When I say the complete helplessness of having to accept responsibility and pay the consequences for somebody else's decisions, it affected me, and it has always affected me. And I left home at 16, and I've never gone back since then. I remember I was like, okay, I will never have to pay the price for somebody else's bad decisions in my life, and I'll never do it again.
And then you start grinding.
And I started grinding. I mean, I did whatever I could. I did, and I didn't care. I've never thought that any job was beneath me. I had some set of skills. I've always been pretty good at fixing things, and I've always loved people. I had a gift for gab, like selling stuff. So I've always been able to use that. I don't know if in a traditional, and when I say traditional corporate setting, I mean anything outside of the .com era, because it's a very unique corporate setting. I don't know if I would have risen as quickly or not, because I was very much a rebel and very much outspoken, did things my own way. But the .com industry was the wild, wild west. Yeah. Nobody knew what was going on. It was growing faster than anything else.
You said 2004, right? That's when you started your
no, second. That's the second wave. Okay. I'm older than that. Okay. I'm back in the late 90s when DSL technology was brand new, stuff like that.
So how did you get into that? And what were you doing? How are you making money? Like, how did you even have a clue that was even a thing?
That story is awesome. It's one of my favorites, and I use it as an example for anybody. So if you're watching this, record this portion because you're going to want to know this. I had recently left running a commercial cleaning company and didn't really have anywhere to go, but knew that wasn't the right way. Moved to Dallas with my second wife at the time, which we ended up putting shortly after that, but came back in there, didn't have a job, was looking for a job, knew that I didn't want to work weekends anymore or nights particularly. So I went to a staffing agency and said, here's what I want, gave them my list. I said, but while you're looking for that, because I know it's going to take a while, give me the position you can't fill, and I'll go make you look good. Give me the one that's really a temp position, and then I'll go do that. Just give me something to do. Well, that was with a computer company. It was an Acer Open clone company at the time, and it was doing nothing. It was some paperwork and cleaning up their warehouse. But, it gave me something to do while I was interviewing. Throughout the course of doing that, they had a room full of broken parts, broken computer. And when I say a room, I'm talking about a 20 by 20 giant room. Jesus. And through asking them, I'm like, what's up with those parts? Oh, those are all parts that need to be returned, but nobody wants to do it. We don't have time to do it. I'm like, well, that beats sweeping floors. Let me do it. And 90 days later, I was running the returns department for them. 90 days later, I was vice president of returns and research and development. I just went from there. They hired me full time, tripled my income. And I started out at $8 an hour as a temp sweeping the warehouse floor. And that story sounds made up at this point, but it's true. And I didn't care that I was doing it, and ended up not only helping the staffing agency, which I kept that relationship for a long time with because they were very happy that I'd made that go away, but that led to the innovation and the development of several different things that I was able to do that nobody else was doing in my department. I ended up going to work for Efficient Networks, and I managed the returns and the logistics for the Pacific Rim for them. All of this at 24 years old.
Wow.
Met my wife, traveled all over the place, just got tired of not being at home. She had 3 kids when we got married. I didn't want to be away from them. I turned in my notice and moved to Jacksonville. Had a logistics job lined up. The bubble, they told me I was nuts, but the bubble burst 3 weeks later. My former assistant, I was sitting on the beach at Fernandina. He called me and said they just laid 300 people off their escorting
just
center.
Like that.
Yeah,
just
they
like
lost everything.
I remember when that happened. My uncle was really big in the and he lost a lot in the .com crash. So that's interesting. I mean, so what I hear from that story, Flint, what I hope the listeners, and they're pretty smart, will get from that is that, and I want to ask you some specific questions about it, but your willingness to do something that was quote unquote beneath you, or that say things that anybody else wouldn't do, and then the willingness to go above and beyond, to be proactive, to see problems and be willing to step up and find a solution and fill it in the marketplace or within this story, the job. Those 2 qualities in and of themselves is pretty much where I can say all of my success, or any success I've ever had, has ever come from showing up, being willing to do what others won't, and then stepping up and filling the need when it's there. And so I want to ask you is, in the very beginning, what was it about you, would you think, that allowed you to kind of set your ego aside and do things that nobody else wanted? Like, what was it? Just solely, like, where was the headspace of, have you always been like that? Or was it because you were so quote unquote beaten down that you had nothing left to lose? Like, most people are not willing to do that, and that is the thing that stops them. So why were you willing to do that?
I've never given a rip one way or the other. I don't care.
But that's always been you. That's just always been who you are.
That's always been who I am. I've never cared when there's a job to be done. If I was working for somebody, I figured I negotiated my pay on the front side. And if I agreed to sell them 8 hours of my day for X number of dollars, I never looked back and said, okay, well, I agreed to do this for that number of dollars, not this or that. It was like, okay, you bought my time. I'm just going to do whatever. So I didn't care. I was sweeping floors, I was doing this, and I'm here anyway, so I might as well do this. I already had that negotiation on the front side. So if I provide as much value as possible, then when I come back and want some more money, then I'm okay with that. But now, even as an entrepreneur, and even at the level that I'm at today, I mean, even yesterday, I was on service calls with the guys, and I was out personally doing training on skill set that I needed my crews to have. I could have sent somebody else to do it, but that was just what needed to be done. And I've always looked at it that way, as okay, so who cares? The one phrase I hate, and you will not work for me if you ever look at me and say that's not my job. You will not work for me again after that.
Yeah. Dude, 100%. The more that I hear you talk, the more I realize why I connect with just the way that you be and the way that you show up online. I could not agree more, dude, like 100%. So let's take that a step further. Now you're sitting on the beach. You just got off the phone with your friend. 300 people are laid off. You just took this trip across Jacksonville. You're like, fuck it, I'm going for it. What are you doing now at that moment? I mean, do you already have something in the works? Do you have a bigger vision? Like, what is this where Flint, the full-time entrepreneur, is born in this moment? Is that the whole thing, or what happens next?
That makes for another piece of a pretty compelling story. Had the job lined up, logistics job, and it wasn't supposed to start for a couple of months. So this is back in the day. We had cell phones, but most people called home phones. That logistics job went away unbeknownst to me in the middle of the time that I had off. And when I went to call and get my start date and was following up, they said, oh, no, we were supposed to leave you a message a couple months ago. That division no longer exists.
Months ago?
And I was like, okay. And we hadn't been burning through the money I had saved in my stock options, but I mean, there wasn't enough to live on indefinitely. So I remember Des and I were laying there one night, and I was 25 at this point, and we were laying there going to sleep and stressed. She's like, well, what are we going to do? And she was still working. And I said, there's not many positions out there that are going to pay a 25-year-old kid, college dropout, 6 figures. And this is 25 years ago. So you put it in perspective. So I'm going to have to go sell something. And I don't really want to work weekends or nights. I need to help sell a high ticket item. So it was either cars or office equipment. And I chose to go into office equipment sales. Well, mostly because I didn't have to work the weekends because businesses weren't open on the weekends. Wow. And started selling copiers. It happened to be a fortuitous decision because it was right along the conversion between old analog copiers and printers to digital. And since my background was in the digital world, I was able to understand a lot of that on the front side. It led to a lot of my success in that. But that's really where I started to feel the reins of the corporate world. I do want to add one more thing to that piece of the story. Yeah. When that transition happened, it wasn't easy. I looked at Des and I told her, I said, I've got to build a pipeline if I'm going to do this. It's going to be at least 90 days before there's any kind of realization of anything other than the BS based salary they're going to give me. That's it. I said, this is going to suck. And it came right down to the wire, to the point where we didn't have 7 at the time. We had 3 children at the time. And I can remember having to go to the grocery store, and we had a lot of beans and a lot of hot dogs. But I remember standing there just feeling like an utter and complete failure as a man, because I couldn't even buy pork chops for my family. I had to buy a pack of hot dogs, and that was a struggle to give the kids something to eat. And it was beans and hot dogs for a long time. And I stood there in the middle of the store, and I broke down and started crying. And it was a very intense time for me. And soon things were already turning around. But the problem is when you're in the middle of that depths of despair, you're in the middle of that trough where you're starting over, you're digging your way out. The only thing you can look at is what's right in front of you. Right. But it's more important then to look past that than anything else. And that time really taught me, especially as being an entrepreneur, that when things are harder, when things are escalating, and Des and I have since that time have really used this, it's like, man, we must be about to grow or become really successful, because there's just a lot of shit hitting the fan right now.
Yeah, dude. So again, I'm listening to the story, and the vision to see what's coming down the pipeline in that whole story in and of itself is very impressive. To understand, okay, like I'm making a change. I'm gonna have to go sell something, as opposed to I walked into this thing, I was sweeping floors. I decided to step up and do what nobody else wanted to do. And then very vertically, all of a sudden, I'm like the logistics man and the refi. Like now, the foresight, it's to be able to understand, like, go, okay, well, what am I going to do next? I'm just going to go sell something. Like you weren't really even doing that per se in the position you were in. So the fact that you were able to see that is incredible. But even more than that is the unwillingness to give up, the persistence to keep going. Like, and I want to stop right there for a second. I know that you would agree that in today's society, when most men, unfortunately, are faced with that decision, they run and they leave their family or they turn to drugs and alcohol. And I'm not blaming, I'm not belittling. If you are a man who's struggling right now, like I'm in no way trying to make you feel that. I'm just saying that is the reality of how society is in the Western culture right now today. So why is it that so many men are struggling? Do you think right now, kind of off topic, and I'm going to get back to the story, why are so many men today struggling to go do that thing, to show up and make it happen instead of just running away like most of them are?
There's a lot of answers to that question. The easy one is, you know what? It's real easy to stick your head in the sand.
Yeah.
Alcohol, and yes, alcohol causes an innumerable amount of problems, but it temporarily solves some of them because you don't think about them. It's not a great solution, but if we pretend that it's not, then we're discounting the fact that there's such an epidemic of alcoholism out there. I mean, you drink enough, it'll stop you. It'll stop the pain for a little while.
Yeah, 100%.
It's not a healthy solution, but it is one that people choose. The other thing is we've forgotten we are a generation of fatherless men that are being raised by a generation of fatherless people. And what's that's led to is incredibly declining testosterones. And this is a theory of mine, but if we don't suffer and struggle enough as young men and as boys, then we don't know how to do it as adults and as men. We have to struggle. Chuck Palahniuk in Fight Club says, how do you know who you are if you've never been punched in the face? If you take that down to its very base level, is the suffering is the point. The struggle is the point. And so many men don't realize that, so they just run away.
Right.
And not understanding it. We were talking about this the other day, not you and I, but we were talking about this the other day. It's like everybody just wants to kick the can down the road so they don't have to deal with it right now. Well, eventually you have to pay the price for those choices. So men today are not taught for things to be hard, and society teaches them this level of aggression and that this level of struggle is bad. It was different when, it's 3:00 at the bike racks. Okay, we're going to beat the crap out of each other. Our friends didn't jump in and kick the other person. They made sure nobody interfered. It was a fair fight. You stood up, you shook hands, and you went on and you played together. You were done. Society says that's wrong now, but you know what? Guys are going to struggle against something. They're either going to run towards it or they're going to run away from it. And desperation is a hell of a motivator. It'll either push you towards something or it'll make you run, but it will make you do something.
I think that obviously nailed it on the head, right? I don't need to tell you that, but it's fatherless men, fatherless, men raising fatherless men, like so on and so forth down the line, like you said. But the part I want to get to is that I always say there's no context in the world. There's no template. These young boys here in this little community we live in Montana, there's not a lot of men out there representing what the other way looks like. And so I understand why so many people are turning to this thing, but I think that's like you're nailing. There's no rite of passage, but so many men don't realize that in this bubble of comfort that they've built, they're actually the most miserable, because the most enjoyable parts of my life is what you just said. It's been in the struggle. I didn't realize that until a certain point in my life, but now all the struggles, I'm well aware of that. I'm like, well, if this is like it's always been, then I'm about to hit a big level up in this area, because it's like in the struggle is where I found the meaning and purpose of my life. In the comfort, when everything's good, it becomes almost meaningless, because you're just kind of floating by, and that undistracted mind, or like they say, the idle hands are the devil's playground. It really is true in all facets. So I'm not surprised that when men are constantly kicking the can down the road, they're always miserable, because there's no hardship, there's no contrast, there's no duality, which is the point of being alive. Which brings me back to the fact that men need other men, like brothers need brothers, like brotherhood is the medicine, right? And so I'm such a big advocate of men just being around other men, mentors, finding that person that has the vision that you want to live. And that was the second part of what I heard from what you're telling me about laying in bed that night, was that you had a clear vision of what you wanted how you wanted your life to be. Maybe not what you're actually doing or the how, but you're like, I don't want to work weekends. I don't want this. I want this. I want this. And then the second part of men not doing the thing that they want to do is they never get clear on what they actually want. So as a coach and a consultant, as we start to move into this part of the conversation, what is your experience around why do people hesitate or fail to make clear vision that they want? Is it because they don't know how, they don't believe in it, they're skeptical, they don't want to be let down? Why do people fail to create a vision? And how did you know clearly what you wanted? Like, how did you understand that was just how you got things?
Because if you set a goal and write it down, so in essence, you have when you define your term for success, you've also defined the steps for failure. That's what it is. It's easy to let it shuffle around in your head, but when you write it down, not only do you know when you're going to win, you're going to know when you don't lose, when you're going to lose. So if you don't do it, it's now real. So you're not only defining the circumstances of winning, you're defining the terms of failure. And you have to get real with yourself at that point.
So I know this is what you do for a living, but we're just going to get a freebie from you here. And then I want to ask you another question. If I'm a man who's listening to this and I'm tracking with it and I'm hearing you, but I say, Flint, but I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I want. What would you say to that man? Where does he start then? How does he start to find what he wants?
Most guys know what they want. They're not willing to admit it. Ooh. Here's what I tell everybody. Wednesday had the first session of my mastermind class for this quarter. So there's 2 times you have to set goals. There's 2 kinds of goals you need to set. You need to get with your significant, if you're married. If you need to get with your spouse, your significant other, and you need to talk about what your goals are as a family. So if you're too much of a pussy to come up with it on your own, then get with your wife, get with your spouse. I don't really care. I'm not judging anybody. It doesn't matter. And talk about where you want to be 1 to 5 years from now. I hate 10-year goals because think back 10 years ago, your life looks nothing now like you thought it was going to anyway. So I think they're bullshit. But come up with those goals. And then take 45 minutes without any kind of distraction and sit down and have a talk with yourself and think about what do you really want and write that stuff down. And the thing is with my class, I do this every quarter with the class because it's just my quarterly goals. And it always starts off incredibly vague, and that's okay. You can specify. Like one of my goals this time is not fat. Well, I'm in shape, but I still got the belly. I need to get rid of it. It's time. So if you can't find a goal, it's like, okay, I don't want to know where my life is going to be. I don't know where this is going to be. Well, talk with your spouse, talk with your significant other about that and write that stuff down. And then think about what you want for yourself. And it's like, okay, you got something personally you don't like about yourself. Just admit it.
Yeah, you know it is. Yeah.
And write down. Okay, you know what? I'm 40 pounds overweight. I don't like drinking a 12-pack of beer every night. Maybe I can drink a 6-pack of beer every night. The goal is irrelevant as long as it matters to you. So I would encourage any man that's doing this to sit down and think about honestly where you're at. Feel all those feelings about where you're at. You will identify things you don't like. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks about. It doesn't matter how small they are. This is a new exercise for you. That's fine. Put it down, write it down, and then figure out what you're going to do tomorrow to be that much closer to where you want to be. You'll find something you need to do.
Such practical advice, and been true for me. Been true for my life. And I didn't know that until I got around mentors like you, right? Until I was around coaches and mentors and joining programs and things that like expanded my mind, because where I was planted in my little hometowns or wherever USA, there wasn't a lot of people around that were talking like that or thinking like that. And it's not anybody's fault. But if you are a man who's stuck there, I cannot urge you enough to go find a mentor, find a coach, find a tribe, find some people, a community of people that can lead and guide and hold you accountable. And that kind of brings you to where we're at today, Flint. So we've been talking a lot about your past, how you got to where you are, the thoughts and the beliefs that you have. But tell the viewers and listeners, what does your life look like today? Okay. You're married, you're father to 7 kids, you have multiple businesses, you have multiple different ways that you impact the world, that you collect money, that you help your community. Tell us who Flint is today and the multiple things you got going on.
You want a big dose of reality.
Yeah.
And this is a great question, and I'm going to answer it honestly, because I really get sick of the pie in the sky lifestyle that's portrayed on the internet right now. And it sets such an unrealistic expectation, not only for young people, but for guys our age too. I'll give you some reality. Yes, there's 7 kids, all of which have aged out, most of which don't get along, and a lot of them are really mad at. They resent us for whatever reason. Oh, our life is hard. And then they get mad at each other too over the time. Some of them are great. They don't usually all fire at the same time. Some of them are mad at different times. Some of them are happy. It just depends, because you know what? That's reality. Because at some point you have to trust the skills you gave them. And this is all of our first time through life. So I was the best parent I could be at the time. Looking back, could I have been a better parent? Probably, yeah. That's why grandparents come into the picture. We got some practice, so we're good at it. Business-wise, I've got several different businesses. I've moved into the podcasting field, which is not monetized, not really a business. I do have a coaching program and a coaching group because I want to help others learn learned from me. And again, I got sick of, and that's the $750,000 mastermind, mostly because $1 million mastermind was already taken. Dan Fleshman knows that. But where I wanted reality, I didn't want another online course where you download these modules, you get some paperwork, and then, oh, congratulations, now you have some new skills that you should be successful tomorrow. So it's a 12-week program. I go through it with them while I'm teaching it. I share my goals at the beginning. I share my results at the end, and it's specifically tailored to each person that goes through it. I teach them how to set their goals at the front, and I haven't had anybody actually finish the program yet who didn't end up with more revenue at the end of the program than they had when they started at the beginning, because I wanted it to be reality. I didn't want it to be fake. One of my other businesses is a maintenance business that's specifically focused on real estate investment trusts and hedge funds. I don't know if a lot of you guys know about that market, but we are in a reset right now. Probably 80 to 90% of my volume went away almost overnight. It was not insignificant. It was a large number that just disappeared. It's not there right now. It's kind of there, and it's a little bit coming back, but not the way it was before. So we had to go out once again and redefine, okay, what does that mean? Well, what do I want? I want to continue my lifestyle. I always started with what I wanted, not, oh my God, everything's falling apart, let me run away. Okay, well, I need to define this. And then I just hit the streets and started doing it again. Well, does it suck? Yes. Having to rebuild all that? Yes. But what's the alternative? Lay down and give up?
Dude, yes. Oh.
So that's the reality. The reality is that not everybody's going to be on board with you every time. And your life may look one way and you want it to look another way. Well, you get to control that. So that's not a really super pretty, beautiful, perfect picture, but that's my life right now.
Like I can't thank you enough for sharing that. And it's not insignificant the way that you shared it and what you're talking about, because, and I think it was Brad Lee or something the other day, but it's irrelevant. I mean, it could be Brad Lee, Andy Frisella, it doesn't matter. All the top guys, they'll make a post every now and then that says something along the lines of entrepreneurship is, 70% thinking you're crazy, 30% thinking you're 29% it'll never work again, and only 1% of the time you win or whatever. And we kind of like the pictures and we go through it, but I don't think enough people actually stop and understand that is their vulnerable moment in the way that their brand is built and curated through all the handlers and team and stuff. Is like, yo, dude, being an entrepreneur never, ever gets any easier. This is entrepreneurship. It's like we get better at understanding how to manage our life. But most of entrepreneurship is not home runs and grand slams. It's like if you're getting daily singles and doubles and you're consistently doing that, those are the people who win. Not this fallacy of thinking you're going to hit home runs and grand slams in entrepreneurship, parenting, marriage, whatever. Even if it's your corporate job, a manager, it doesn't matter. Like, it's a fallacy on social media, because the reality of it is that it is a world of duality that we live in. It's light and dark. It's winning and losing. And the sooner I think that more people can accept that, they're going to have stories like yours. And that's the reason I wanted you to share. And it couldn't have been set up any better. That's the reason I wanted you to share. Like, what is it like? What's your life look like today? Because you're still the dude that was one of 3 kids who was in and out of, relationship with your father. Was he there? Was he not? Mother trying to hold it down. You're the same dude who was buying beans and hot dogs, thinking how bad you feel as a man that you're not able to give your family. And you're still the same dude who's winning, who's got this mastermind, who's got this handyman business, who's got all these moving parts. You're really out there doing your thing, and you're still going, look, guys, it's still reality. This is still real life. And so, like, hats off to you. Like, thank you so much. You probably know at this point, but that creates and holds a lot of space for people who are going to hear this message.
I really hope so. Guys, the one thing that I want to get the point across is I don't want anybody to feel sorry for me. You know what? I do plenty of that on my own, because I feel nuts half the time and I feel frustrated. But more importantly, don't be afraid to fail. We have tied so much stigma to not being perfect that people won't even try. And get out there. I tell all of my guys, get out there and screw some stuff up. Go. I usually use it a little more vulgar than that, but go make some mistakes. Failure is not terrible. Go learn how to get back up again, because you can fail 99 times. If you stand up the last time, guess what? You won.
Heck yeah.
Nobody controls whether you win or not, but you.
Dude, that's so true. I used to have a ball coach, or that's most of my ball coaches, but that's what they always said. Like, I don't care if you make a mistake, just don't make it at half speed. If you're going to make a mistake, be going all out. I can deal with that. If you're giving me your all, I can deal with you making mistakes. But if you're pussyfooting around and you're going half speed and you're dicking off, like, then it's a problem, right? Because not only are you not giving it effort, but you're not paying attention. And so it's like, I resonate with that a lot. And I'm just realizing right now, talking to you in this moment, that I think I was raised by mostly coaches in my life. No wonder I became one. It's interesting. I'm just realizing right now, I'm like, damn, I think those were the only men in my life. Well, man, I do like to keep these episodes right around 40 minutes long. So I want to wrap this up soon. Speaking of Dan Fleshman, maybe my favorite entrepreneur in the whole world. I just love what Dan's about and how he does it. But his podcast that just came out, well, I guess it's been a few months now, but the Money Mondays, he's like, I do 45 minutes because studies show that the average person listens to it, whatever. I'm like, okay, if Dan Fleshman's saying 45 minutes, that's what we're aiming for. Get people get in and get this in. So I appreciate your time, dude. I appreciate everything you've shared with us today. And I'll just end with one last question. What does it look like now? Like, so Old Man Energy is here. You're arrived at, you're making money. You've established yourself as a father and a husband. You're being real about what's going on. Like, what's that next phase? What's the next phase for you? And the reason I'm asking you that, Flint, is because there's going to be some men right now who maybe they're having a little success as an entrepreneur. Maybe they're having some success. Maybe they're in the corporate world, but there's men your age that are saying, a little bit older than me. I'm 39. You're not much older, but a little bit. There's men going, what's next? Like, is this it for me? They're thinking, or society's telling them it's time for them to ride off into the twilight. And so I'm asking you, like, what does this next version of Flint look like? And what can other men learn from the way that you're going to attack that phase or the season of your life?
You don't have to believe the lie you've been sold your entire life. 60-year-old Flint is going to look a lot like 50-year-old Flint. 50-year-old Flint looks a lot like 25-year-old Flint with gray hair. I still have been bald since I was young, so there's not that. But the other reason that Old Man Energy exists is because, and I think I said this at the beginning, our peers were getting ready to settle for less of a lifestyle. Retire, going to settle down, going to do this. Man, our kids are grown. They're on their own. It is time to put your foot on the gas and move forward. Now, you know what? Make sure you're still in love with your wife and your kids are grown, because that's important. But don't slow down. Do not slow down. You slow down, you die. That's it. You may not. What Ben Franklin said that most men die somewhere around 25. Yeah. Or don't bury them until they're 75 or 80. Don't let off the gas. The other piece of advice I would give anybody is, when your life feels like everything's great and going good, put your foot on the gas, because you're just not aware of what's going wrong at that point. Don't let up. Don't get complacent.
Yeah, that's such good advice, man. I'm glad that I found you online in this crazy world, bro. You have a fan and a mentee in me, and I'll be following along in all the things that you do, brother. So lastly, and I'll let you go, let you get back to your day and manage all things. What can we do? What can the Gillan gang do to support you and your mission going forward? Like, what is it that Flint would love some support in as with what he's building next?
You know what? The best thing you can do is keep things alive. Go follow the Old Man Energy podcast. Okay. Social media drives on attention. And man, if you got some questions that Marshall can't answer for you, or something that you resonates, and you want to reach out and talk to me, man, reach out and talk to me. I will make time for it, because we need a community of like-minded, positive thinking, forward-moving people together, period. And Marshall, it's been great. I've enjoyed talking to you. And even just your posts have helped me bring things I was already doing together and change some of the stuff that I'm doing. So keep putting your stuff out there, brother.
I appreciate it, man. Well, thank you. Till next time, my brother. We'll talk soon. Have a great weekend.
You too, Marshall. Peace.
Thanks,
love y'all. All right. That was my appearance on Marshall Live with Marshall Gillan, the top paid speaker. I know we had some good content. We had some good stories there. Felt like we had touched on a bunch of different topics. One thing that I know that we're all dealing with right now is frustration. It seems like life is just more stressful than normal. And whether this is in your personal life, whether it's in your business, whatever, it just kind of feels like we're navigating the unknown, and it's everywhere we turn is frustrating or hard. If you're feeling that way, shoot me a message. Go to some of the links in my profile. If you're struggling in your business, there's some ways that we can help you there. If you're struggling personally with direction and what have you, I am starting to run monthly boot camps where I help you guys address that, help you get started becoming more authentic and more true to yourself, so that you can be there for your family. So if you are feeling frustrated or lost, or relate to some of the topics that we talked about with our frustration in this episode, then please send us a message or go to one of the links below in my profile, and let's see if there's a fit. As always, thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure that you are following us on all social media, like and subscribe for more content. And until next time, love y'all.